keep it together. All right, here we go. And we're live. I am so excited to be talking to Margaret Kellas, who is the director of This Is Not the Morning I Thought I Was Going to Have. And this is our Chicago Spotlight interview. Margaret won, and her film won the Chicago Spotlight Award for the Femme Short Film Fest this year. And this is actually the first inaugural year that we're offering this award because, yeah, we never had in person before. So this was our first in-person festival. So I was like, okay, let's do something Chicago.
I love it. Yeah.
So yeah, it worked out. So thank you for, joining me. And I'm so excited to talk about your film. We'll just dive in if that's all right.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course. So I want to start with what inspired this story.
Yeah, absolutely. Once I graduated school and I was doing a fair amount of acting, I was really focused on the theater space specifically because I found that the projects that I was auditioning for from a commercial and film standpoint, I wasn't feeling great about the roles I was being called in. It was a lot of young women who typically had something horrible happen to them in the case of like a Chicago Med PD, or Chicago Fire, or it was commercials that didn't always feel like I could dive into the work as deeply as I wanted to. And so I feeling really inspired by web series in Chicago, specifically Sam Bailey. I don't know if you've ever met her or know her. I don't actually know her that well, but I loved her web series, You Are So Talented, and felt really called to make my own. I actually reached out to her in an email maybe like 7 years ago and was like, what's your secret? And she very kindly reached out back to me and said, find your people, find the friends that you want to work with, and build your community. So I started writing a web series that was called The B Team. And it was all about people that felt like they were second place or that like second choice to people that they felt like were their first choice, their A team. And it was meant to be not really sequential. It was also very inspired by Easy, which was that Netflix show at the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And just wanted people that felt like really familiar to me who, felt like the B team of people that they love deeply. And one of the stories was about two sisters. And I really clung on to that one and decided that this was the one I actually wanted to make into its own thing separate from a web series. And so that's kind of how it got developed. And then we workshopped it. So it did change quite a bit between the web series and what it actually turned out to be. But that was sort of the inspiration behind it.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm not sure if this was similar to the web series, but why the car is the location? Was that,
Yeah, I just have to say, like, I gravitate toward cars. I don't know if it's just, I grew up in the city and feel like when you got to drive in a car, it was sort of a special occasion. It wasn't like my family. I grew up like right off the Paulina Brown line and the Ashland bus. So I was always on the bus and Al as a kid, but when we were in a car, it felt like there was something important happening. And I always, for some reason, I think I write scenes in cars a lot. And I think it's because it feels like you're both so trapped. You can't leave without a certain amount of danger. And also it feels like there's always something in the air that I always feel when I'm in a car, specifically with family. So that was part of it. And then just thinking about like space a lot, like you're driving your mom's car, like this place that you have memories, and the idea of being stuck in that. And then you're with your sibling and you're like trying to take ownership over that space. Yeah. And you can't, and your sibling already has like a previous relationship with that same space. It felt, the stakes of that felt higher being in a moving car. It definitely didn't make production easier, but I always was it was a story that was written. It was like the car came before the story did. it felt important. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yes, the car is the location, but you're very aware of what's around the car. Like
Right.
I was like, wait, I think I know where that is. Like,
Oh my
is that
gosh.
is that in Lincoln Park? Is that, in Lakeview? Like I was just trying to guess because it did look familiar,
Mm,
so so I do appreciate you incorporating like Chicago around the driving. So and the even the dialogue was about what you're
yeah.
seeing as you're driving, which I think was so like perfect, for what it was. So yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you.
Um so when I watched the film, I couldn't help but think of a film called Saint Francis. Have
Oh
you heard
yeah.
of
I
it?
love Saint. Yeah. I'm a big
Yeah,
fan of Kelly.
it's
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite films, and I couldn't help thinking, the abortion,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
hinted story was just a piece of the film. It wasn't like this is an issue film, and it was similar, I feel, to how Kelly O'Sullivan handled it just being like one piece, but not like this is what's the
The
catalyst
full
of
focus of it.
what's been going on. But I wanted to share a quote with you because I've interviewed Kelly
Oh yeah.
twice about this film, and I wanted to get your thoughts based on this quote. So it's actually for the call sheet that
Mm,
Camera Ambassador and Cinema Femme did this year. So I'll just read it. Or I'll start with the question that I asked her and then her answer. With the overturn of Roe versus Wade this year, can you talk about how you normalized and brought a lightness to a serious subject like abortion in St. Francis? And she said, I feel St. Francis shows that abortion most of the time is not the defining moment of somebody's life. A lot of TV and film have made it seem like it is the defining moment of a person's life. So then it's been given all of this weight. Like, do you want to be the kind of person that gets an abortion rather than it being a completely normal decision that all different kinds of people make? It's not just the teenager or just impoverished people who face these decisions, but unfortunately, those are the ones who are going to get screwed the most because of the overturn of this law. Just one last bit. I remember being at Planned Parenthood and thinking, look at all of these women of different ages and races and socioeconomic backgrounds. I think the more we as a culture can normalize it and say, there's not this kind of person, but it's every kind of person. We don't need to pretend otherwise. Right now, it's so terrible because it's denying our humanity. So can you kind of comment on that answer based on your story?
Yeah, absolutely. I am in full agreement. I think, since I actually wrote this around the time that St. Francis came out, and I think there's been TV that's done a better job of showing abortions and talking about abortions. I mean, but I would say one thing that really bothers me is that
Yeah,
we make it like this moment that a woman has to learn a lesson from. She
right.
must grow up. And I think I really resonate with Kelly saying that we make it like the full focus or the full plot of someone's story.
Mhm.
But I don't believe that women need to grow up as a result of having an abortion or that a lesson needs to be learned. And I do think it comes from this like deep, deep place of shame. And
Yeah,
it makes me really sad because I think we as women
yeah,
live with shame no matter what. Like we have it. Like we don't need to even get abortions to have shame. Like it is present. And
right,
the fact that we're asked to like learn our lesson from a choice that should be very, very normalized. I mean, it's just healthcare. I don't even like to consider it like
right.
a choice. It's just healthcare.
Yeah, yeah,
Making a decision for your life. And yeah, I wanted to show that shame in my own film, but
yeah,
I wanted to write a story about a girl who's maybe the most important conversation she has that day is
mhm,
about the way she misses her sister, not about the
yes,
fact that she had an abortion. And
right. Right.
Because we're gonna, again, we'll feel the shame no matter what. And I wanted to normalize that we as women make decisions every day and have hard conversations all the time. And
Mhm.
our ability to have or not have, or choose or not choose to have children is like, is such a small part of the lives that we live.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really important to me. I really resonate with what Kelly said, and was definitely very, I really love St. Francis for her
Yeah.
ability to, her character, I don't remember her name, but she didn't need to grow up as a result of her choice to have an abortion. She just
Yeah.
was living her life and understanding her own identity as a woman, but also not, like, just kind of figuring out how to get by in life. And I think that
Right.
is so much more real about women than anything else. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. And yeah, I did see the parallels with, how you guys treated a subject like that.
Yeah.
Um, so my next question has to do with Chicago, since this
Yeah.
is the Chicago Spotlight
Yeah,
Award.
absolutely.
I wanted to hear a little bit more about your connection with the city of Chicago. But I also wanted to hear, what do you think about Chicago, the Chicago film community is unique, and why is it different than any other city's film community? Or what do you think makes it special?
For sure. To answer your first question, so I grew up in Chicago. I was raised by a single mom and grew up in Chicago. And my dad was first generation Greek. Where he grew up, like the Eisenhower tore down his house. And my mom grew up in South Shore, and they were relatively older parents when they had my brother and I. And my dad passed when I was 6. My mom never remarried, so raised us by ourselves. And I feel like so much of my writing and my story is I was very fortunate to be in spaces. My mom very much encouraged me to be in spaces outside of our immediate community where people's stories might be similar or different than mine. And that
Yeah.
is really how I got attached to theater and film, is because this world of make believe and imaginative thinking also opened me up to people that also grew up in Chicago, and where I maybe didn't feel so different. I felt very different as a kid as a result of that.
Mhm.
And so my connection to Chicago is often like wanting to show some love to a city that often is described in so many ways. I mean, we all know in the media how it's described, but also
Right.
the dichotomy though of acknowledging that I did grow up in a very I grew up on the north side in the Roscoe Village neighborhood, and I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and it was there that I was like, from the city, I'm a city kid, and I graduate and become an adult and realize that there's so much about the city that I wasn't taught about or didn't know or didn't have exposure to. So it is weird having this like huge pride and sense of identity in a place that I actually learn about more and more and more as I get older and older and older.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I try to make my work reflect that. Women that are also very confused about, have so much identity and like stake in the whole game of what is Chicago, but like maybe don't know the full
Right.
intrinsic, like the complicated nature of Chicago. I know a lot more now than I did when I was writing This Is Not the Morning, but I think that like sort of limbo back and forth, I think a lot of people feel that way, or have like duplicity in their love for Chicago, and they're wanting to understand it more and wanting to be part of the solution, but still sort of figuring out how to be part of solutions.
Right.
And so I don't know how else to like write truthfully. Like that's so it's very much in my identity. I feel like kind of understanding what that dichotomy is. And I know it's going to continue to grow too. I know it's
Yeah.
only going to get more complicated and
Yeah.
convoluted, but I
Sure.
look forward to having my work sort of reflect that confusion. Um,
Mhm.
and then I don't think I would be able to make a film like this in New York or LA, if I'm honest. I feel
Right.
like we did a lot of we were very fortunate to have a lot of like encouragement from the people we were filming around and the businesses, and a lot of curiosity in the city about what we were doing and how we were doing it. And that like made for a very encouraging day. We were able to
Yeah.
sort of, there's so much like you can't control a lot when you're film set, let alone when you're in a moving car. And I felt very lucky to have, we were yelled at by one man, I should say, of course. But like, other than that, a lot of people were like super encouraging of what we were doing, wanted to know what we did. And it was actually like some people that were like we ran into that day that would come to a screening later on of the film that like wanted to stay connected with us. And I don't know if I would get that in LA and New York. To me, I don't
Right.
know those cities as well. I love both of them, but I don't know if I would have that much of an intimate setting or just people that are genuinely curious about what you're doing because they don't see it so often.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see some of the film scenes differently. But I also feel very fortunate that I'm part of IFA. I obviously found out about Cinema Femme from, well, I'll get into that, but I found out,
Yeah.
social media first and then kind of did some digging, and that level of accessibility is so special to me. But even so, like I took a class actually with Emma Thatcher, who wrote and directed
Oh, yes.
Provo, right?
Yeah, Emma.
And I just happened to follow Emma. I heard about Provo. I was very excited about it. There's not a lot of big features that come out of Chicago, and it's very like
Right.
St. Francis we've already talked about. It's like very exciting when you see people doing that. And she had posted about this class she took, and I thought, I'm not doing anything. I'm going to take a screenwriting class. Emma
Wow.
happens to be in the class. We end up hitting it off. I go to the Chicago Underground Film Festival last summer where Provo is premiering. I meet Ali Torum,
Oh
who
my God,
short film
Allie
is
the connector.
right, who's also presenting her short film. And then I go to the Midwest Film Festival in the fall, and you have a table there, and Ali
Yes.
introduced me to you,
Wow. That's
and then I'm
awesome.
and then I'm submitting to you. So like I feel like that type of synergy is so unique to Chicago, and just people like being eager and excited to connect you to people. I mean, Ali also introduced me to like all of the people, even at the actual fest, like just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And that's so special to be able to get and to harbor those type of networking opportunities, of course, but just people that like love film and love to talk
Yes.
about film. It's always a treat to be able to do that. So I think that's really unique to Chicago. I don't have a lot of friends in LA and New York who are able to have that same sense of community like I've been able to build in what feels like a pretty short time. So I feel very lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I actually think it is unique just how the Chicago community kind of grows together in this film community. Because, the people that attended our fest from like LA and New York, they're like, we want this in LA. And we want they want to make their own like cinema femme groups, and
Yeah.
I think, to me, it just seems natural that people are coming together and who have similar passions. But I guess that's not as natural in other cities. And so I
Yeah.
think that's great.
It's
We're kind
awesome.
of setting the tone, so I think that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so and then I want to talk about some technical aspects of the film, but I also am very excited to talk to you about your work with Noise Floor and Katie
Yeah.
Water. Yeah,
Love them.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start with that, but then also I'm curious about, working with your cinematographer, Tiffany Bauer. Like,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about how you decided on what shots to be made and all that. So maybe
Yeah.
start with Noise Floor and then go there.
Yeah. So I got acquainted with Noise Floor actually from Claire Cooney, who I know from the theater world. Again, like so many women have kind of brought me to this moment. I feel very
Right.
fortunate. And she had used Noise Floor on one of her shorts and recommended them. And because we filmed like right before COVID happened, we
Mhm.
had quite a bit of time to understand like where are the gaps in sound, and there was quite a bit. So we actually captured more than we had originally thought, but there was the whole scene where she vomits, where Lindsay
Yeah. Oh,
had to be like fully ADR'd. And I like can't stand ADR. So I was very nervous about it. Claire was like, go to Noise Floor. They're the best. And once everything opened up in 2021, we were able to secure some studio time and literally ADR that whole scene.
oh my goodness. That's
Yeah,
so funny.
I know.
Wow.
It's a really great time. Katie's so great. I just feel
Yes.
like, I mean, she's so talented. She did all the Foley for like the seat belts, the cell phone,
Wow.
yeah, they added so much color to the film, which I just made it feel so much more real after we got handed their cut of it. It was very, very cool. And then they were like, we had so much fun that day in the studio, just doing the ADR for that scene.
So
Yeah, she's a
cool.
great, we had her do, we just finished our second film as a creative team together called The Stacks, and they just wrapped up sound on that. So excited for people to see that. But Noise Floor's
Yeah,
been really good to us, and we love them. Katie actually reached out to me to congratulate me as well, which was so kind of her,
yeah,
for being part of Cinema Femme.
yeah,
So yeah, I love that. But again, that Chicago community. It's just,
yeah,
it's really special.
yeah,
And then to answer your second question about the technical nature. So Tiffany Bauer and I are close friends. So we actually, she was coming from the advertising space where she didn't feel very creative, and she is very, very talented. But she's always focused on editing. She's an editor at
mm,
heart, which I think is such a skill to have on
yeah,
set. You have an,
yeah,
oh, I will always value that on set, having somebody that can kind of cut it in their head and give me that
mm,
feedback as a director. It's just super helpful. But she was really craving narrative work, and she had done some filming and is very creative herself. And I pitched it to her and said, it's going to be in a moving car. And she said, okay, let's figure it out.
yeah.
We rented some equipment, we got a car rig, and we yeah, put that on my, it was my car, my 2005 Honda Civic. Loved her. Unfortunately, she didn't make it past 2021, not because of the film
Okay.
shoot, because of other reasons, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And we really decided on the shots based on that. So I really love Lady Bird, that
Yes.
first scene when they're in the car.
Yeah.
That's what I called like my master shot. The Lady Bird shot was our master. I just loved that, like, seeing these two women experience something at the same time, but they're sort of having a different experience with it, but also a
Yes.
very similar one. And I wanted to capture that in my film, just like they're both experiencing something at the same time. And in many ways, there's parallels that are similar, but in many ways, they're sort of in their own world, their own story, their own East of Eden. I think that was the movie,
Yeah.
the book on tape they were listening to.
Uh-huh.
And then for the over the shoulder shot, was we brought the camera inside the car and had it like essentially suctioned to near the
Wow.
mirror. Yeah, it was wild when I think about it. And that was important to me because I wanted to highlight their different worlds, the different emotions and experiences that they were having separately, and have the
Yeah.
opportunity to isolate them. I didn't want to film from the back though. I didn't want to film from that over the shoulder shot. I wanted to feel like we were in the car with them,
Yes.
like we were sitting on
Mhm.
their lap almost. And so that's what I pitched to Tiff, and then she very creatively figured out how to do it, and then did some recommendations around the shot where we're going to the flashback. Essentially, we
Mhm.
played with them going from behind the car and playing with that, so we felt like it was in the past and you're not necessarily in that moment with them, but it's a pleasant sad time to
I
remember.
love
Yeah,
it.
but yeah, it was a
Wow.
lot of partnership, but I love working with her. I think it's invaluable to have a DP that you can work with very closely and pitch something to them and have them give it a good college try, but also keep you realistic when you're on set.
Yeah.
So yeah, very lucky to
Oh
have
my
her.
God, that's great. Yeah, because I was thinking that bit where she like thinks she's in a music video and she's like doing this whole thing,
Yeah,
and and it was all shot in the same place, right? So it
yeah,
wasn't like, let's do this scene somewhere else. It was just like, let's do them all right here. So
exactly. Yeah, it
that
was.
that is
Yeah.
that is so cool. That's
Thanks.
so
Yeah.
neat. So yeah, I just have two more questions. This is one of the questions I asked in the in-person screening. What do you hope people see in your film?
Yeah. I think, well, first and foremost, I am going to go back, even though it's not the core of my film, but I do hope people see women as 360 human beings who can make their
Yes.
own choices, and just understand that we make choices every single day, some that have to do with our fertility, some that don't, some that have to do with our body, some that don't. Like, leave us alone. Just like,
Yes.
let us be. Also the right to the privacy around the decision. That's something around the Roe v. Wade stuff that also freaks me out, is the right to privacy, the right to your own
Right.
ambitions and secrets. I think that's really important. So obviously that, but also I hope people come in with less assumptions about who they think another person is, even if they are your sibling who you feel like you know
Yeah.
so intimately. But I hope you come in with less assumptions. Let them start from scratch. Let your friends, let your people start from scratch every once in a while, and you might learn something new about them or see them differently. Let people grow up a bit. I think it's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And
Yeah.
then my final question is, what's next? What are you working on and all
Oh
that
man,
stuff?
so much
Yeah.
actually. So I hope the Stacks, which is that second film I told you about, I do hope to enter festival season this year. So we started the submission process, which I'm sure, as you know, you probably got, tons of submissions. It's a little bit of a beast doing the research. So we're
Wow.
doing, which is really fun. I am writing a feature though that I hope to produce in 2025, 2024. What year? 2024, next year.
Yeah.
That's about a young woman who moves back home, and it's meant to be like a coming of age story, but she's older. She moves back home after a breakup, and upon discovery of a man's watch whom she assumes is her father's, learns that her mom has a secret past, and gets
Oh,
close to a male companion whom she maybe shouldn't be. It ends up being like an
ah,
ex lover of her mom. So really kind of getting I don't know, a little gritty in the I want to talk about like daddy issues and why we associate that with women who have difficult relationships with their fathers or don't have fathers.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
want to make people feel like, okay, you want to see some daddy issues? Like I'll show you some, while also still establishing that relation, like the mother-daughter relationship. I kind of like an anti-Gilmore Girls in a way. What does it really mean to be best friends with your mom?
Wow.
So yeah,
Oh,
that more to come
I'm
there. I hope to do.
excited. And
Thank
then
you.
quick, what's the short about the other one that you're going to be
Yeah, the
submitting?
Stacks is about an isolated young woman who fakes a butt call to
Ah,
an old crush and revisits. I think the road she definitely should not have taken. And I directed this one. My friend Jillian Warden, who's also a lot of the times my creative partner, she played Lindsay in This Is Not the Morning.
yes,
She wrote it and stars in it. So yeah, more to
yeah,
come on that one. Yeah.
that's so good. And we didn't even talk about this, but your actors were, those two
Thank
sisters were
you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Kind of weird to go back when we're going forward here, but I'm curious, like, this will be the final question. Like, how did you find them for this film?
Yeah, I went to school with them. It was one of
Oh,
those, like,
cool.
yes, a lot of already pre-established synergy. Jillian is a year younger than Sarah and I. Sarah was actually a master's in the master's program, and I was in a bachelor program. So we
Ah,
weren't like, we graduated without sort of that like theater school mentality, competitiveness, and
yeah.
wanted to create together. So I really wrote it for the two of them, and then they made it
That's
so much better than I could have ever expected. They're both very,
yeah.
very, very talented actors. I'm very fortunate to have had them. And also they're my two best friends. So also fortunate to have
That's
them as friends.
awesome.
Yeah, I feel very
Oh,
lucky.
that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I
Thank you.
mean,
This was so much fun.
I guess we went quicker than I thought, but I think we got all the good bits in. So
Absolutely.
I'm very excited to share this, and I'm so glad we gave you the Chicago Spotlight Award because it just makes sense, and also I should have mentioned this in the beginning, but the audience chose the Chicago Spotlight. Originally, I was like, let's get a team of people to make an official choice, but then I'm like, we're in Chicago. There's so many people from Chicago going to the movie. Why not let them decide? So that's kind of how your film was. The people loved your film, and also it was a Chicago film. So
Awesome.
I think that's kind of perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much.
yeah.
I'm so grateful. I'm that was one of the best weekends of my life, just like getting to be there. So thank you for having us.
Of
And I'm
course.
so excited to see what you all do next. I am
Yes.
a forever fan of Cinema Femme and you, Rebecca. It's been really
Raise
great
the
getting to
roof
work with
right
you.
now.
Raise the roof.
Taking it
Absolutely.
down. It's just like
Absolutely.
an impulse, and I'm like, where's that coming from?
No, I love it. I'm here for
Yeah.
it.
So thank
Awesome.
you,
Thank
and
you very
so
much.
excited to follow everything
Thanks.
you're doing, and especially that feature. It seems
Thanks.
amazing. So,
I'll
all
keep you
right.
posted.